Today, I have Vijay and Kushal with me, who are my co founders, partners in GI Ventures. You had shared that AI is the tsunami of innovation plus capital.
We're seeing an annual capex today of about $700 billion. And for context, the entire US interstate highway build out from the 1950s to late 1980s was about $500 billion in today's money. It's an insanely high volume compared to the historic use of their operating cash flow. They need to start earning back their investment on all of this capex, on all of this compute, on the build out of data centers. Does that mean the cost of an API call goes up? Does it mean that the monthly cost goes up? What is it that you're reading into that?
I think that's what these companies understand, that even though people might be able to create a lot of their tools and even replicate the whole functionality, it's not going to be the same. People can't handle it across their organization, manage all the team members. So having these MCPs, these wrappers, which can be used by the LLMs, the AI agents to orchestrate and then also handle much more complex workflows, which can involve talking to other tools as well. That's where the game would be. And that's where MCP is now becoming like the gold standard for the LLMs, the AI agents.
Is there any technology moat left?
So I think one of it would be having these army of FDEs who can custom build and or at least modify, tweak the systems to ensure that it's useful for the businesses. Another I feel is the whole orchestrations model routing itself. There's like hundreds of AI models, a lot of them open source, and then the bigger models as well. How do these routings happen, and where are those places where things can actually be deterministic?
We are in the business of building new ventures in AI. We have to look at what spaces make sense to build new ventures, and we've even come up with a framework. But yeah, the highlight here is that task is not a job. For example, if you look at radiologists, as AI started doing the radio scans, people expected that this job will decline and we will not need as many radiologists, but didn't realize that the scanning part of it is just cost of the AI scan actually went down, and now doctors started recommending radio scans for everything. Now you needed people to complete the job, to sign them off, to take the responsibility, to do the boards. And that's a classic example of Jevons paradox and why sometimes, it may not result in job losses. Would love to know more about, what we are building at GI Ventures. What are we looking at now in the future? What are the interesting themes?
Yeah, I think there are a number of interesting themes. We are
Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of Build AI podcast. Today, I have Vijay and Kushal with me, who are my co-founders, partners in GI Ventures and the fund. Welcome, guys. Welcome back again.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
So today we have a very interesting episode where we are actually going to refer to some of the insights that we shared at our investor LP lunch in Menlo Park at Sandal Road at Citizens Private Bank's office. And we had a bunch of LPs and investors who are already invested in the fund, and then others who were quite interested. And so we had a really good discussion. We had used a slide deck. We are going to refer to some of those insights, and the deck will also be available for you to download later on. So with that, let's start. As you guys know, that GI Ventures is a venture builder focused on launching vertical AI companies in financial services, enterprise productivity, commerce. We have 18 months of experience of like getting our hands dirty, building AI stuff across like 3 different companies, multiple products with customers. So there is a lot of things that we have learned, during this journey. And, we just wanted to share it and also answer some of the questions that we have been asked in the past about what are we seeing, what are we learning. So with that, I would ask Vijay that, you had shared that AI is the tsunami of innovation plus capital. So do you want to like double click on that?
Yeah, thank you. I think this is a really important sort of metaphor for us. is this isn't just like any wave, and we've had so many technological waves. We are seeing a tsunami that will crash onto the coastline, onto the shore, and it's going to have enormous effects to change the landscape. And that is something we've seen with other historic technologies like electricity, like the railroads and other things that have required a similar huge amount of capex in terms of the gross national product. So when I think about what's happening here, we're seeing a annual capex today of about $700 billion. I mean, the numbers are hard to fathom, but it's estimated that in the last couple of years, it's between 4 and 600 billion. That number by the end of this year will reach 7. And for context, the entire U.S. interstate highway build out from the 1950s to the late 1980s was about $500 billion in today's money. So when we say this is historic, it's not a bunch of excited technologists getting too excited and too keen to exaggerate what's happening. This is really dramatic. And when we take it a step further, we recognize that the changes that are happening right here are going to be felt in a number of different ways, but mostly by the hyperscalers. And if it's helpful, I'll share a little bit of that visually with our audience here. So here we go. What you'll see here is this tsunami that is building and is going to crash. And what that looks like in the short term is that there are these hyperscalers at the heart of this capex. And so as a percentage of all their cash flow, we know these companies are minting money. They're spending, as of last year, approaching 3/4 of all their cash flow on capex. So it's a lot of money in aggregate, and it's an insanely high volume compared to the historic use of their operating cash flow. So the key thing here is, what does this mean? The amount of investment isn't just a bubble. It's a ingredient to change what is possible. Because at the heart of all this growth is, a very specific outlier behind the SaaS-pocalypse, and that is what we're seeing right now, which is being the meteoric rise of Anthropic. And I think, Amit, you've really noticed how this is something that mainstream Silicon Valley, mainstream Sand Hill Road missed in spades.
Yeah. I mean, AI is so new and it's changing so fast that even the best technology investors completely missed. Like all the tier one VCs had basically passed Anthropic, and that turned out to be the biggest outlier. It is estimated that they may cross like $100 billion in revenue before they do the IPO. And if they do that, that will be the biggest IPO in the history of tech, bigger than probably SpaceX, which will be fascinating. But also on the capex thing, I had just one interesting comment that it is so good that these hyperscalers and all these companies are investing, because what does it mean for companies in the application layer like us is that not only the compute is actually becoming cheaper and cheaper over a period of time, but also for consumers, because Claude and OpenAI had subsidized their consumer products. So that's why we get something in $20 per month. It's supposed to be like $500 per month. And what we get in $200 per month is thousands of dollars per month. It's great that these companies are spending that much money, and then it's becoming available to us in the application layer, both as consumers and as companies.
So a question for you both is, if they need to start earning back their investment on all of this capex, on all of this compute, on all of this build out of data centers. Does that mean the cost of an API call goes up? Does it mean that the monthly cost goes up? What is it that you're reading into that?
I can go. I think it's a behavioral change which all of these companies are trying to induce in consumers specifically, and that's where subsidizing the costs kind of gets people hooked on these AI products. And once that has happened, the behavioral shift happens, and then they have moved out of the traditional internet usage patterns. And that's where over the last 15-20 years of how we used to browse the internet, how we used to visit websites, that is now changing. And giving that at subsidized rate, that's where, I wouldn't mind paying $20 when I'm going to be able to use it for in all possible ways and not having that rate limits which are induced onto me. So
Yeah.
I think on the consumer end, it's that shift which they're trying to induce, and we are already seeing that, yeah, all of us are hooked onto LLMs more than I think the usual browsers which we used to use earlier. Uh, on the business side, I think LLMs are fairly expensive already. And from our end itself, for every product, we know how much of API expenses we have. And that's also required because, yeah, on the consumer end, people just want to use the LLMs. They don't mind sharing the data or what's happening in the background. While on the B2B side, we have to be wary of the security, what data we are sharing, and if you're using any foundational model APIs, that data shouldn't be used by the company itself, or probably we choose to use an open source model. I think this shift, or since there has been a behavior which has happened within people, that shift and trying to induce that in a very short span of time is causing all of these incumbents to spend all of these money, a lot of billions of dollars, just to get people change that behavior.
Yeah. An interesting question, interesting perspective, Kushal. As you were saying, like for the same work that you are doing using Claude's consumer product and probably paying like $100 per month, but if you're using APIs to do the same thing, it'll cost much more. But the interesting thing is that I think this is a new freemium model. Like the freemium model of the SaaS era is now such that you get a user to start using Claude Code or Claude Cowork at $100 per month, and then they love it, and then they start using it so much that now they want to use it for work, and for work related stuff they have to take care of that the data should not go to the models for training and those kind of SLAs. So you need the APIs to be included in your own AI workflows, and that becomes expensive. So in a way, I feel like this is a new freemium model where you get them hooked with the consumer product, and then they end up using your costly APIs. I think the cost of both is going to go in a very divergent way. Like the cost of consumer AI product may actually increase, while I think the API's cost for the same capabilities may actually go lower. So interesting stuff to watch.
Definitely super interesting to see exactly how that materializes. We are, we have to remind ourselves just at the beginning phase of what's happening. And now we see that there's real money that's possible when you have that kind of strategy and you become particularly a trusted partner for large organizations. I think
Amazing.
the hard thing though is while there's a lot of promise and a lot of investment, there's a lot of hype and a lot of slop, right? And we talk a lot about what makes companies AI native. And we're building new companies that are AI companies. And maybe we won't use that term soon. Maybe every company will be an AI company, just like every company uses the internet. But for now, uh, you know, just everyone having Cloud Codex doesn't make you an AI company. So what makes someone an AI company? It could be that it's how you use the AI that matters a lot. If you're generating a lot of slop, if we are in the internet that is post-slop or and not the pre-slop internet, then you have to have taste and judgment and great thoughtfulness and design and experience that helps to launch a product that when it gets to the app store, it doesn't just look like um, a schlocky, sloppy, bad product. It's got to do the things that delight customers. And I think this is where our whole language is starting to change. Mark Pincus of the gaming company Zynga said we used to talk about MVP. Now we're changing because what's minimum is pretty minimum. It's pretty easy too, right? So in what's the maximum launchable product is kind of where he's thinking, and it's when people start making a shift to that care of product management and design and development that we're going to see real stars live still in the app store as opposed to the slop that is drowning it today.
Yeah. And the slop is actually in various areas. Like, for example, you have to really look at LinkedIn and Twitter these days and filter out and decide like maybe 5% of the posts are actually worth reading because everything else is like AI slop. I was talking to a friend, he runs a 25 people tech startup, and he was saying like internally he has mandated that none of the internal communication or things should be done in terms of documents, because what he realized that suddenly everybody was creating these long documents and it was taking so much time to go through it because all of it was generated by AI, and very detailed docs. So people were spending so much time on going through it. He said, like, all we want communication between the employees is write a 5 bullet point email and make it clear that what do you need, what do you want, what is it you're suggesting, what is the problem we are trying to solve in 5 bullet points in an email or Slack. That's it. We don't want those big documents going around.
Because that looks like good work, right? Detail, being
Yeah.
comprehensive, yeah, being generative, but that's not anymore.
Right. Okay. So, um, um, Vijay, if you can, yeah. So I
Yeah.
think what is very interesting is that overall, I think in the beginning of the year we saw that SaaS-pocalypse, as we call that, and it has been measured in different ways. One of the ways it is measured is this SaaS Capital Index valuation multiples, which have gone down. But also a lot of people, because this was like a sensational news and the media ran it day in day out and everybody saw it. But what people did not see is that a lot of these stocks actually recovered. The Saspocalypse was not really Saspocalypse. It was like partial. It only happened with half of the guys. And so specifically, like we looked at a bunch of companies which got affected and they are still affected. Like, for example, HubSpot and Salesforce and, players like that. But then there are some of them which actually came back, and not just came back, they came back strongly and still going very strong, such as Datadog, Databricks, Snowflakes. Some of these companies actually are net beneficiary of the AI revolution which is happening.
And it shows
Uh,
in their earnings reports, right?
Correct. Same with CrowdStrike, Okta, Palo Alto Networks. I think these companies have actually gained from all the security measures and guardrails which are required for AI. The thing which got really affected, I think, because of which like players like HubSpot got affected, was that I think there's something very, the secular trend here is that the C space model may may not exist, or at least a large part of it is getting disrupted because nobody wants to pay for seats anymore. They want to pay for outcomes, or like, because if you take 1,000 seats and only 200 people are using it actively, it's such a loss for the company. And also, you're like, when I used to work for this growth stage company, tech company, I realized that everybody has like hundreds of SaaS subscriptions, especially in the US, and especially tech companies, Silicon Valley companies, and New York based tech companies. They all have like hundreds of subscriptions, and it's all seat based. And they all realize like how much money they are blowing up on that. And now suddenly, like, everybody is cutting down on those seat based spends. Both HubSpot and Salesforce made the CRM headless, so you can actually bring your own agent, irrespective of whether it's Claude or whatever, and then you can actually do most of the stuff you are doing. So thereby, you are not going to use the UX UI which was built for the human being, and it will basically be an MCP server or something that you'll use with your agent. Completely changes the game. I don't know what you guys think about that.
Yeah, definitely. So the earlier SaaS play of having APIs, playing around with data, taking some smaller actions which are deterministic, has now changed to orchestrations, which is nothing but doing more complex workflows, complex set of actions by AI agents. Uh, so what earlier was HTTP is now soon changing into MCP, with every companies which were in the SaaS play now having they are building their own MCP servers, because they know in the end it's how the AI agents, AI LLMs can communicate with their SaaS tools, with their MCP servers, and how that can be used to orchestrate a much more lengthier, longer workflow. Because people are looking to automate processes now, not just inputting some data, seeing in some UI, and then controlling around that, right? Right now, even with, let's say, a HubSpot or Salesforce, with Cloud Code or Codex, any of the AI coding tools, it's easy to just give some prompts and replicate the same UI. In fact, even the backend. But then the whole there's much more, like the deployments, the security, handling all of that is still difficult. I think that's what these companies understand, that even though people might be able to create a lot of their tools and even replicate the whole functionality, it's not going to be the same. People can't handle it across their organization, manage all the team members. So having these MCPs, these wrappers, which can be used by the LLMs, the AI agents, to orchestrate, and then also handle much more complex workflows, which can involve talking to other tools as well. That's where the game would be. And that's where MCP is now becoming like the gold standard for the LLMs, the AI agents. I think over 200,000 MCPs are getting launched almost every month now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But do you guys think, like, is there any technology moat left?
I have a different point of view on moats. So I believe that in the AI era, we need to ask ourselves, what is our, not our moat, but our canon? So there might be a moat. You might have a patent. You might have a brand that only you can use. You might be Coca-Cola, so only you can use Coca-Cola formula to make Coca-Cola. Separately, you might have some regulatory moat, but less important than moats, which are the language of incumbents, is developing really powerful canons. And why do I say that? People stopped digging moats and they stopped building fortresses, perhaps after the 15th century. And why was that? It's because every battlefield, every military campaign involved gunpowder and cannons. And that meant that your moat didn't matter because your entire fortress would be, knocked to the ground. Not that someone could break down the door or, knock over some of the battlements. The entire castle or whatever could be destroyed. And that's what is happening right now to perhaps some of these CRMs. That is what is on the horizon for a few other companies whose business models are being fundamentally challenged by the canon of AI. And so for the startups that we want to nurture, support, invest in, having a powerful canon is much better than creating a flimsy moat that might take years to fill.
What's an example of a canon
What's an example
in
of
the
a
AI,
canon? Yeah, in
especially from an AI company's?
Yeah, I think from an AI company's perspective, if you're, we can pick what's possible with let's say Claude Code or Codex is today. We are actually able to be coding in ways that replace the current technology and current like tools and ways of working, and that means you launch a new you're using like coding, and that's replacing armies of developers, perhaps as a systems integrator. That challenges an Infosys or an Accenture. Maybe you have tools that can change the entire like customer service landscape because of the agents that automate away 90% of the happy path types of questions and still boost your NPS. So we're just at the beginning of this, but the AI products that fundamentally reshape the nature of work and reassign value are the things that are going to be really meaningful and different.
Right. Interesting. So, Kushal, what do you think? Like, we often talk about that. Of course, creating an LLM, a new model itself is quite hard, and it requires a different type of infrastructure and money and capital and all of those things. But in the application layer, it seems like when I talk to builders, they're like, "Oh, this is something that we can build." Like everybody has this feeling in the application layer that they can literally copy anything, right? So, is there any technology moat left? And if not, then what are we looking at?
I think there's a couple of them which are still left. One is in the niches. Right now, I think every company wants things custom built and not just use what's there. Just because how AIs have made things easier. So I think one of it would be having these army of FDEs who can custom build and or at least modify, tweak the systems to ensure that it's useful for the businesses. Another I feel is the whole orchestrations model routing itself. There's like hundreds of AI models, a lot of them open source, and then the bigger models as well. How do these routings happen, and where are those places where things can actually be deterministic, or it needs to be deterministic? Because in the end, AI is intelligence, and that means the output might not be as consistent as it would be in the software era where it was all rule based heuristic system. Now, with everything having intelligence, over time the model tends to change as well, and over time the output quality can change. It might get better or sometimes get worsened as well. So I think the moat would lie in ensuring that the responses, the orchestrations are consistent, and being able to have that sweet spot where what needs to be deterministic should be deterministic, and then how the model routing should work where the intelligence is needed. Like not everywhere cloud performs the best, or an opus or probably a quen is better to handle some smaller intelligence tasks, right? So ensuring these things are there, as well as the self-learning loop where over time not allowing the responses quality to get worsened just because yes the foundational models are changing these routing systems, and then ensuring that there's the self-learning loop. I think that's where the moat lies, and that's something which is not probably going to be done by just a cloud code or just building a system. That's easy to build for today, but will it also maintain over the next few months or even years? I think there's
Yeah.
a more.
And I think that's a great, there is a great example, from GI Ventures portfolio when we were working on Fast Tracker. And basically, it is in such a micro niche where like there's a lot of M&A happening with RIAs, and there's this whole transitions work that has to be done. Unless you actually break down that process and then automate it with AI, as Kushal was saying, like build step by step, build the harness, you would require a lot of domain expertise, problem solving, and that kind of work is actually everybody is realizing now that AI cannot do things autonomously. You need these domain experts, FDs, product people, and then a lot of customization. And that's why OpenAI has set up a deployment company, Anthropic has set up a deployment company along with investment and private equity firms. They cannot be a bigger, proof point that let's not go with a lot of influencers saying that AI can pretty much take away all the jobs and do all the stuff autonomously. And actually that might be a good segue into our next slide, that there is also this whole um, discussion and debate happening around token maxing versus token minimization. There are one set of companies like Nvidia and Meta and so on who are encouraging their employees to go for token maxing and basically burn at least X number of tokens. Like there was a contest in Meta. Nvidia CEO said that if you're not burning $250,000 of tokens, then there's something wrong, and stuff like that. While the broader market and especially small and medium businesses are thinking about how do we understand like what is going to be the spend on something that we are automating. Is it going to be more than the person who was doing that job earlier? And the Uber CTO actually explained that they blew up the entire AI budget in like few months. So we feel at GI Ventures that this is a very, very important aspect, that for the larger market outside of some big tech companies and hyperscalers who own and who have investment in and benefit from more compute and more usage of tokens, I think, and for everybody else, understanding the cost and minimizing the token usage is kind of very important and has to be built into the AI systems you are building.
Yeah, I think the cost can go out of control, and that's where things might be choking for the smaller businesses. Earlier, the server expenses were usually fixed, right? A single server is running irrespective of how much traffic you're getting. Usually, those costs were fixed. But with AI, with the usage patterns, and if there's more calls happening, the cost can bloat up very soon, and that's when you don't know how much you're spending on it. So I think it's important to ensure that, yeah, for bigger companies it might not matter as much, but for the smaller ones, uh, ensuring that the token usage is staying in check while also scaling the systems, that is very essential now.
So everybody loves talking about what AI is going to do to the labor market. Is it going to kill jobs? Is it going to create jobs? Is it going to do both? How much? And this is a really stressful thing for anybody in virtually every field. So what is the fact and what is the fiction? Because there seems to be a lot of misconceptions amidst the debate. Amit, tell us why tasks are not jobs.
Yeah, I think we spend a lot of time on this, and mainly because we are in the business of building new ventures in AI, we have to look at what spaces make sense to build new ventures, and we have even come up with a framework. But yeah, the highlight here is that a task is not a job, and by that what we mean is that if you look at translators, travel agents, and radiologists, three separate different examples, it can give you enough like sort of insight into what is going on. So, for example, if you look at radiologists, everybody expected that as AI started doing the radio scans, people expected that this job will decline and we will not need as many radiologists. But they didn't realize that the scanning part of it is just a task. It is not the whole job. The whole job actually involves somebody actually taking the responsibility and signing, the diagnosis that has been done, and then also there are boards in which discussion happens, especially over the edge cases in radiology and stuff like that. So there's a many other things that are involved in the job. So what it actually ended up happening is that as AI started doing these scans, the cost of the the scan actually went down, and now doctors started recommending radio scans for everything. Like the volume of prescriptions around this actually increased like multiple fold, and because of which now you needed people to complete the job, to sign them off, to take the responsibility, to do the boards, and therefore even more radiologists were required. So actually the number of radiologists grew over a period of time. And that's a classic example of uh, Jevons paradox, and why sometimes it may not result in job losses. And while there are some other things, other jobs which are, the task is the job itself. Like it's very transactional. Like for example, travel booking, you literally know, if you know your flight or hotel what you have to book, and you know the duration or when you have to fly out, it was basically a transaction, and all of that moved away from travel agents to OTAs, and the channel completely shifted, and it resulted in a lot of job losses on the travel agent side. Same thing happened with translators. So AI can do the translation really, really well. The task is the job itself. So then we started thinking about, the, like, if you take it, if you go a notch deeper and think about how can you evaluate different segments in terms of whether they are good for AI disruption or not, then you look at these four things. If with the lowering of the task cost, what will happen? Is there accountability involved in that? Like somebody has to sign off, and there is regulatory or compliance reasons because of which you will still need human beings. The job involves multiple other things apart from the task, and then maybe there is switching friction, especially important for banking, financial services. You can't rip off a core banking solution and implement like a AI core banking. It does not even happen over a 6 month period. Forget about like a 6 week period. So there's stuff around integration, certification, regulation, training, which is still quite important. So yeah, this is the framework we use, and very, very, very important to sort of look at job losses in this with this filter.
Yeah, and I love some of these particular elements, like thinking about the job as bigger than a single transaction, asking what is the job in a total sense beyond specifically that task. It really makes you stop and think, not just for highly skilled and highly educated roles like a radiologist, but perhaps for more common everyday types of jobs that just because you automate them doesn't change the purpose and the function and the meaning of that individual. So, an example that I have, which is, not grounded in the same amount of data, is if you look at the number of people who are doormen working in apartment buildings in New York City, there are generally more, not less, because more apartment buildings that get built, more opportunities for some of them to employ doormen. And the reason that they do is not because we can't automate a sliding door. We've been doing that for decades. It's not about opening the door. It's about so many other things: taking packages, making people feel safe, signing folks into the building, helping somebody out, creating a different type of atmosphere and mood that is an important role for a human. And that is like very different than, let's say, someone who used to be an elevator operator, who, a lift operator who had to press buttons and open and close the door until we created modern lifts and elevators where people could get in and do that for themselves. So, we've seen this before, and we know that there are some roles where it expands to be much more than just opening the door, and others where what the technology does is much like number one here, the lower task cost actually means we can afford to put in more elevators everywhere. And there's actually more people working in fixing elevators and maintaining the elevator, which, by the way, is a higher paid job than standing in the elevator and pressing a button to go to the next floor. And that's really exciting because it means we are, to mix metaphors, elevating the skill and function and quality of work that is there.
Yeah. And same thing happened with the ATMs and the banking industry. So really good examples, Vijay. And Kushal, you have been building Turtle AI, and when after building like three or four different vertical AI solutions, we realized that there's like some very fundamental blocks or modules that you need to have to create skills, to create workflows, and to run AI agents in a very secure fashion, make them accurate, manage the costs, and those all those things. Um, can you talk about, like, in your experience of these 18 months building multiple AI solutions, what are those, like three or four things that you have shared here on the slide that are very important?
Yeah. Uh, so I think the way it all started, the LLMs, I think the first thing was AI coders, where the whole coding process itself became much more simpler. And back then, and even now, I still tell that the actual engineering is still required, because that's where time and thought needs to be put in, irrespective of how much ever code the AI models can generate. On the similar lines, there is a whole lot of processes, a whole lot of things which people want to automate with AI, and they want that to be built. While that can be done easier, and in fact, they can get the happy flow to work, but to get all of that to work always and ensuring that the security, everything is managed, that's where the hard things lie, and that's where things can get trickier and more difficult. The way AI has progressed now, there's this whole layer which is needed, which can handle or which can where people can implement guardrails, ensure that there's no data leakage. Or since AIs are not just an input and output, there's a whole lot of smaller interactions, a lot of processing which can happen within a single run. We need to ensure that even within, there shouldn't be any data which is accessed, or there's nothing which is against the security or the norms which that company could have defined. And that requires every trace, the whole span, to be evaluated and ensure that there's the layer of observability and evaluation which is set forth to basically have the whole process run right and ensure that there's proper drifts which are computed, because most AI responses are not just a set of parameters or outputs. A lot of times it's a whole sentence. It's a natural language output which are condensed, which can be condensed into parameters as well. So ensuring that there's proper computation engine which looks at the drift and sees what are the changes which are happening, and also self-learn, that is, I think, the core aspect, and that's how AI is evolving now. And as we already discussed, managing the tokens and ensuring that where AI is used is actually relevant, and not like just because, yeah, everything can be done by AI today, that doesn't mean we should use it everywhere, right? It can impact the output quality drastically over time, and it's hard to be relying on the AI systems to work perfectly all the time. So this is this was a starting point with Turtle as well. Our main thesis is that yeah, we need to ensure the AI systems are running right more than, yeah, it's running, and processes are getting automated, and also people are able to stay in the loop of what security standards are there, and also define every agent run as an identity. So earlier, a person who's using a software in a company would have an identity, and his access controls would be defined separately. While with AI agents, the way the workflows are run, it just can't be restricted to that. Defining an identity for an agentic run is very essential, because that's how we can ensure that multiple agentic runs are not mixing up the data, and the data which might not be accessible by one person should not be accessed by another agent. So defining identities over on an agentic level and ensuring that there's sufficient routing system to manage the cost, that's what Turtle handles. And over time, we are working on making it a hybrid system where any workflow where people can just drag drop some process which they're running. We build an intelligent routing system which ensures that what has to be deterministically run is a set of heuristic code, and then those 20-30% of the process where intelligence is needed, that mimics the thought process of the person who is running the process, right? So yeah, I think